Hello and welcome to my senior project overview for my project PiePiper, set out to digitize how one of my local restaurants manages their back-of-house operations. When I first had the idea in the summer between my junior and senior year, I spent time in Bellingham where I landed a position as a grill cook at Chipotle. It was here where I was exposed to industry-leading prep time, series breakdown analysis, and business insight integrated into every aspect of processes. They had each day mapped down to the minute from open to close. I found the inspiration in the flexibility these programs offered their companies. It allowed them to plug and transfer management or employees with ease because of the standardized business practices ingrained into each location. So today we will be breaking down the project dependencies, going over some project challenges, talking about how styling was approached, looking into my favorite feature, and wrapping up with a retrospective. Let's quickly look at the login process that must be completed when attempting to visit the app, starting with the restaurant selection, the root user login, and a success and failure message, whereas if you're a non-admin user, you're directed straight to the prep list. My backend mostly consisted of me finding the best ways to validate requests and running timely metric calculations. Express Validator was my favorite to use across the entire backend of the application. Overall, it took about an hour or two to apply it to my API within the first week of creating my codebase, but since I have not had a related issue and the return error messages are pretty and concise. If I could go back, I would not have picked Express for my application stack, though. It is nice for simple backends meant to add another layer of serving data for some of the smaller projects I've worked on, but in what I've become interested in such as big data and data scraping, in this project and beyond, Express will not cut it down the road. My experience with Express during this project has caused me to try and find an alternative that better suits the needs of my personal side endeavors, such as Flask or Fast API, since I know data-driven applications will always have the best, most capable libraries for AI training and data processing. Split up into 4 or 5 major groups, the front end is actually quite simple if you break it down. Styling was handled by the Icon libraries, Tailwind, and the MUI Joy and Material libraries. MUI was utilized heavily in the final half of development because I brought it in to spruce up some of the more commonly used pages. The caching and data fetching libraries are likely the part of my application I spent the most time thinking about and I enjoyed developing with. TanStack is my favorite because it's easy to understand and can be used in just about any kind of application. Redux and Axios both worked well in the roles as well, but I found TanStack the most enjoyable and wanted to try some of their other parts of the project like TanStack Forms or TanStack Start. Form management overall wasn't all that complicated, but I did conclude that React Hook Form has been my favorite form management library. Now that I have made a few side projects as well as PiePiper, it feels nice to find routine in my favorite libraries, which has made me far more comfortable and increased my productivity tremendously. Especially with React Hook Form, I've been able to test out when it comes to form validation and pairing React Hook Form with other favorable libraries like React Query. TanStack and Redux made up almost the entirety of my caching and fetching solution. React Query was the right use case here because there was a lot of potential for bad API requests which are required to update the UI, such as in the daily prep list. Allowing React Query to handle the loading and errors saved me lots of headaches and helped me improve the user experience twofold, since it enabled me to add adequate error messaging and spinners where necessary. Redux setup takes considerably longer and can be taken in multiple directions once implemented. It became my option for accessing authentication across the app, an imperative requirement in this application since it enables the app to be able to store 3 restaurants and potentially more operations and data. By accessing the stored restaurant ID for the logged in user at load time, the user will always be served with the data specific to the restaurant they're signed into. I considered numerous different libraries which required lots of different proof of concepts. I ended up boiling my options down to NextAuth, Supabase, and Clerk before upgrading my application to Next.js. This was a difficult decision, but the proof of concept with NextAuth on Next application was seamless and fitting for the minimal amount of configuration that I needed. I considered eliminating the headache completely by leveraging a third-party authentication service like Clerk, but I ruled this option out eventually for a couple of reasons. The first being I want complete control over the way the organization is mapped out and assigned. In the future, the intricacies of the organization can be utilized to improve user experience by allowing a simple attribute check in the middleware to easily tackle protecting routes, for instance, or it could be used to automatically filter lists according to what the signed-in user's role or department is, which could decrease time spent filtering and modeling. By allowing myself another layer of specificity in the user model, I don't limit myself in terms of assigning and modifying the numerous roles that make up a business like Republic Pie or its sister restaurants. I designed my database to employ a data warehousing design technique. Although this added a layer of complexity, I learned a lot about the advantages of relying on warehousing concepts like dimension and fact tables rather than regular entities. The warehousing design pattern divides tables into two essential categories: fact tables and dimension tables. Dimension tables, often abbreviated as DIM, characterize the business entities that compose your operational processes, such as DIM prep item or DIM ingredient. Fact tables, meanwhile, serve as bridges that connect relevant dimension tables to document transactions and business activities like fact daily prep list or fact inventory. These fact tables contain measurable observations or events such as completion timestamps or quantity metrics, creating a comprehensive record of your business operations. Dimensional modeling prioritizes read-performance by denormalizing data into fact and dimension tables, allowing most analytical queries to execute with just 1 to 4 joins instead of 6 to 10 typically required in normalized systems. This design was best suited for storing the restaurant's daily transactions. The data store has been implemented with future growth and planned for, since the performance will continue to improve with larger data sets. Now onto the user interface design approach. Custom components allow tight binding between UI state and schemas, which is why I love React. They help navigate complex data warehousing designs by transforming entities into their business transaction forms. Having components directly handle post-put operations provides an excellent entry point for junior developers. By aligning front-end state models closely with data stores, we reduce translation complexity. React and Next's ability to balance creative freedom with logical structure is what initially attracted me and continues to impress me as I continue to develop. Next.js's popularity is unsurprising to me, given how it combines beginner accessibility with high performance and developer experience. There are multiple parts of MUI that I included across the application, like MUI Joy or MUI Material. I wasn't able to completely utilize Material components. A lot of the custom components and styling was custom CSS and Tailwind, but core functionalities usually include a MUI component. Let's look at a feature I especially want to highlight, the restaurant comparison tool. The owner-specific page allows comparison between restaurant operations. Currently, this only has metrics that you can see here, but there are more metrics that can be created specific to the restaurants. This tool gives stakeholders a central place to compare and manage restaurants. It gives all necessary data to understand where a restaurant stands with prep completion and previous efficiency, as well as general stock levels. This tool is only in the hands of restaurant owners and stakeholders. Shift managerial accounts will only have access to the inventory screens specific to restaurants with a more granular layout, and other prep and managers' dashboard screens. With comparison mode on, you can compare inventory preparation processes or performance metrics specific to restaurants. There's only about 5 metrics as of now, including a few cleaning tasks, but this can be added to or modified. Now let's look at how I overcame some challenges. My contact with the restaurant has allowed me to contact some of the local providers in an effort to try and get authorization to do site scraping. Because you are only able to see pricing based on your subscription, any scraping I would do would be under their authorization, therefore putting their account at risk of disrupting service if the scraping were to ever be flagged at some point. The last thing I wanted to do was impede on any standing relationships or business that the restaurants has going, so this was a major hurdle, and I am taking as much precaution as I can while keeping the stakeholders in the loop about my progress for complete transparency. I have invested plenty of time into finding the correct solution to handle the scraping and data store updating, and I have a solution standing by ready to try with the right authorization and login credentials from the restaurants if it gets to that. But for now, the screen is filled with mock data in an effort to exemplify the benefits and how the tool can be implemented into business practices. Typing was a huge issue, and stock Next configurations have led me to only use TypeScript when developing, so the types just completely add up. I found ORMs extremely beneficial on a few fronts. The first being the peace of mind with typing, and what is otherwise a very delicate system. The type safety starts from the second the database is queried, since the types are derived from the database schema. Admittedly, the process for me to introduce Drizzle into my application was quite the challenge. PyPiper is a data-driven application whose data store contains lots of transactional tables, which are made up of plenty of foreign references. This made for the labor-intensive task of manually creating all connections within the application schema file. Also, the task of making developments locally and managing the migrations between changes in the database for each attribute change caused some frustration. Looking back on it, after going through my initial learning curve of utilizing an ORM, the benefits still seem just as important even after my initial developer experience. Although there were a few painstaking hours in the beginning, the overall type safety and general maintainability of my application should remain fairly high for the scope of this application. Upgrading to Next so late in the planning phase may have thrown off my schedule for development a little, but it launched me into the best thing I have put my hands on as a developer. In hindsight, I was lucky to have found Next when I did, because when I began to start to learn React last summer, I barely knew about Next. I was able to put the time in with React concepts like the role that hooks play or the importance of modularization and the separation of concerns. My time over the summer and up until deciding to upgrade to Next allowed me to establish a strong fundamental understanding of the uses and best practices of the framework that Next is built on, which overall made for a smooth transition for me once it was all said and done. Without Next, a lot of people's main concern over React, routing, and page management would have likely been a hard challenge to manage, but Next almost made that issue a no-brainer immediately with the app router. On top of that, Next does a good job of improving upon some of the vanilla React library adapters, like NextAuth, which basically handle most of the authentication logic, or NextPWA, which allows me to utilize the progressive web app service worker technology to improve page load times and allow the app to still work when offline using the service worker's page caching system. Next helpful integration with these technologies was another key contributor to helping move the project along. Now, what makes PyPiper worth it? Adding a tool to help document and assist analyzing inventory and prep trends in the intermediary process of the ingredients lifecycle can help fill the gaps to identify inefficiencies. In between point of sale menu items and point of sale ingredient items, this system can also be integrated to help track some of the more granular inventory transactions so that there is more robust inventory management, such as prep employees submitting to the app when waste has happened, whether something is not selling and has to be thrown out or has been spoiled for some reason. This way, the system allows management to make targeted operational decisions based on whether waste occurs during the initial prep stage or during the assembly and sale process. Having complete control of the kind of information that PyPiper would be logging is a tremendous business advantage. Whether the company decides to leverage this with PyPiper or with another service is up to them. But the point is that there's plenty of tools that are built on data like this that can transform the way that they do business. The data is catered to work with these systems so that in the future they can implement some of the following insight and automation ideas I've had during the planning and development phases of this project. Time series analysis and planning of daily prep lists like Chipotle, inventory stock level analysis, stock shelf life cycles, and immediately following the iteration of this code release, I plan to implement a photo upload system linked with some optical character recognition and LLM technology to update inventory based upon order invoices. If the owner ever decided to sell the 3 restaurants, having a comprehensive picture of each restaurant's back-of-house operations provides a significant competitive advantage. PyPiper delivers visibility by giving stakeholders clear insights into trends and stock levels, empowering them to make informed labor and menu decisions. In my opinion, this is the reason enough to integrate PyPiper. The power of data-driven applications allow you the power to transform operational data into tangible business value, as potential buyers can see concrete evidence of efficiency, growth patterns, and operational stability beyond what is already in place. Housing the operations of all 3 restaurants under one domain has numerous advantages. First, it begins to standardize restaurant practices, allowing them to be managed under one roof and compared to one another. Next, allowing managers and owners to compare restaurant locations that fosters collaboration and a better tool to compare the restaurants. Comparison can be helpful for incentivizing by creating number-based goals. Most importantly, Pied Piper allows remote management. With implementation and refinement of the application and use, it can be used to virtually set prep lists, set task lists, or create carts that should be ordered by those in charge. This creates an opportunity to cut labor, if possible, and focus more on the core of the business. Plus, adding a specialized application at all 3 restaurants opens up the field of those who would be able to manage, since all that must be done is neatly documented. This is a major aspect and a useful tool to mitigate staffing and transfer concerns. In conclusion, Pied Piper represents not just a digital transformation of restaurant operations, but a strategic investment in the future of these businesses. By centralizing data management across 3 restaurants, standardizing processes, and creating powerful analytical capabilities, the application provides immediate operational efficiencies while establishing a foundation for future features. The system has been designed and developed with future outlook heavily in mind, and I believe ultimately contributes to the restaurant's long-term value and sustainability.